I was just 13 years old when everything in my life changed. That morning started like any other. Dad gave me a kiss and said goodbye before leaving for work. He was a site manager at a construction company. Mom didn't even look up from her phone when he left. I remember thinking how strange that was. They used to be so loving toward each other. My name is Betty Thomas, and that was the last time I ever saw my dad alive. That afternoon, he collapsed at work. They said it was a massive heart attack. I was in math class when the principal called me to her office. Mom was already there. Her makeup looked perfect, even after hearing such terrible news. "Your father's gone, Betty," she said in a calm voice, too calm. I burst into tears, but Mom just sat there, lightly patting my back like it meant nothing. Later that evening, I heard her talking on the phone with her friend Laura. I wasn't trying to listen, but our house had thin walls, and I could hear everything. "Actually, Laura, this might be for the best," she said quietly but clearly. "Being a widow sounds better than being divorced. Plus, I get to keep everything without dealing with lawyers." Then she laughed. Yes, she actually laughed. I know," she continued. "I'll act like the sad widow at the funeral. I've already picked out the perfect black dress." I was sitting on the stairs, holding my hand over my mouth to stop myself from screaming. Dad's sister, Aunt Helen, was the only one who seemed to see the truth. While everyone else gave their sympathy to my heartbroken mother at the funeral, Aunt Helen just stood there, shaking her head. She knew. She had always known how badly Mom treated Dad. Mom didn't take long to move on. Just 4 months later, she started inviting a man over for dinner. His name was Peter Fernandez, and he had 2 kids from a previous marriage, Adam, who was 12, and Joyce, who was 11. Mom would cook big, fancy dinners when they came over, something she never did for Dad. One evening, Mom turned to me with a sugary voice and said, "Betty, sweetheart, Peter and I have something to tell you." I already knew what they were about to say. The way they sat close together on the couch, holding hands, with Mom smiling like a teenager, it was obvious. "We're getting married," Mom said cheerfully. "Isn't it wonderful? You'll have a new father and siblings." I forced a smile, but my stomach felt sick. "That's great, Mom. Congratulations." Peter gave me a smile too, but it didn't feel real. "Adam and Joyce are so happy to have a new sister," he said. But I'd seen the way his kids looked at me during their visits, like I was dirt stuck to the bottom of their expensive shoes. That night, I called Aunt Helen and cried for hours. She listened without interrupting, then said something I'll never forget. "Sweetheart, sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. Don't forget that." Adam and Joyce moved in just a week after the honeymoon. Right away, they took the nicest rooms in the house. Even my playroom became Joyce's art studio. When I tried to say something, Mom just told me, "Don't be selfish, Betty. We need to make them feel welcome." After marrying Peter, Mom became a completely different person. She spent hours helping Joyce with schoolwork or going to Adam's soccer practice. Meanwhile, I was eating dinner alone in my room. The way she looked at Peter, it was like she thought he was the most amazing person in the world. I had never seen her look at Dad that way. "Adam needs new shoes for soccer," she'd say. Or, "Joyce is going to take art classes this summer." There was always money for their needs. But when I asked for something small, even school supplies, she'd sigh or roll her eyes like I was asking for too much. So I stopped asking altogether. They started going on trips together, not fancy ones, just weekend visits to other towns or camping in state parks. But I was never invited. "You'll be bored," Mom would say, not even looking at me as she packed snacks for Adam and Joyce. Besides, someone needs to feed the cat. So I'd stay with Aunt Helen during those trips. Her little cottage felt more like home than my own house ever did. She never had kids of her own, but she treated me like the daughter she always wanted. "This isn't right, Betty," she would say while I unpacked my overnight bag for what felt like the 100th time. "A mother shouldn't have favorites." I shrugged, pretending it didn't hurt. "At least I have you, Aunt Helen," I said. One evening when I was 17, I brought up college during dinner. I had been looking at schools online and dreaming about studying business management. "Mom," I said carefully, waiting for the right moment when everyone seemed happy. I want to talk about college applications. Mom's fork dropped onto her plate. College, Betty? We can't afford to send you to college. We have to think about Adam and Joyce's education. Adam smirked across the table, and Joyce didn't even try to hide her proud smile. Peter just kept eating like the whole talk had nothing to do with him. Later that night, I stopped Mom in the kitchen. What about Dad's money? I asked. He had life insurance, and he's saved for years. Mom's face turned cold. I've used that money to take care of you for the past 5 years, she snapped. Food, clothes, a roof over your head. Did you think that was free? Stop acting like you deserve everything. You can't just expect things from me. I stood there shocked by her harsh words. I knew she was lying. Dad had worked so hard to save for my future, and now all that money was gone, spent on her new, perfect family while I was left behind. That weekend, I went to Aunt Helen's house, my eyes still full of tears. We sat at her kitchen table, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air as I told her everything, how Mom shut down my dreams of college, and how unfair it all felt. Aunt Helen listened quietly, holding her warm mug. When I finished talking, she got up and walked to her study, without saying a word. I heard her opening and closing drawers. Then she came back with a thick envelope in her hand. Your father came to see me about 3 weeks before he died, she said, placing the envelope on the table. He seemed worried, like he knew something bad might happen. He gave me this and made me promise to keep it safe until you were ready for college. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a bank statement with a big savings account in my name. Aunt Helen was listed as the trustee. Dad had been secretly saving money for years, just for me. Your mom had been acting strange, Aunt Helen said softly. Your dad wanted to make sure your future was safe no matter what. The money's been growing all these years. I started crying again, but this time it wasn't out of sadness. It was because I felt so thankful and loved. Even though Dad was gone, he still protected me. We can't tell your mom about this, Aunt Helen said. I wiped my eyes, and Aunt Helen nodded in agreement. Over the next 3 years, I focused on my schoolwork and kept my college plans a secret. Adam and Joyce never missed a chance to mock me about my future. Hey, Betty, Adam would say in the hallway, grinning. I heard the diner downtown needs a dishwasher. You better apply soon. Joyce would laugh and add, maybe if you're lucky, they'll let you clean tables too. They laughed like it was the funniest joke ever. I just kept walking past them, staying quiet. My silence seemed to annoy them more than anything I could have said. Then came graduation day. I had barely taken off my cap and gown when Mom and Peter asked me to come into the living room for a serious talk. They sat on the couch like judges, ready to give a decision. I stood in front of them, waiting. Betty, Peter said in a firm voice, you're 19 now. We've been more than generous. But you need to understand that you can't live here forever. It's time to get a job and take care of yourself. I smiled calmly. I understand completely. I'll be moved out by next week.
They looked surprised.
It was clear they thought I'd cry or argue. Mom opened her mouth to say something, but then closed it again. Well, good, Peter said, caught off guard. That's very mature of you. Neither of them asked where I would go or how I would manage. They were just happy I didn't fight back. They didn't want to ask anything that might make things harder for them. Moving day came faster than I thought. I packed everything I owned into 3 cardboard boxes and 2 suitcases. It wasn't much. It felt like I had been preparing for this moment without even knowing it. At exactly 10 a.m., Aunt Helen pulled up in her blue Honda. I watched her from my bedroom window, hoping someone from the house might come out. But no one did. Even though I saw the curtains in Joyce's room move, no one said goodbye. As we drove away, I watched the house where I grew up get smaller and smaller in the side mirror until it was completely gone. I didn't cry. With every mile we drove, I felt lighter. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. That house was full of fake smiles and empty love, and I was finally free. That summer, I worked at the Sunshine Cafe, serving coffee and sandwiches to kind customers who always smiled and tipped well. The owner, Mrs. Walter, was sweet, and even let me work extra hours to help me save more money for college. In September, I boarded a plane and left for West Virginia University, 2 states away from everything I had ever known. I joined the business management program. It was tough, but I gave it everything I had. My roommate, Jacqueline, became my first real friend since middle school.
At first, she didn't know much about my past.
But when she finally heard my full story, she just gave me a hug and said, "Their loss, girl. It's their loss." Mom's Instagram page became the only way I could see the life I had left behind. There they were, smiling at Adam's soccer games, cheering for Joyce's art show wins, and posting beach photos from family vacations. The captions always sounded fake, like ads, "So proud of our amazing kids," or "Nothing better than family time." I was never mentioned, not even once. It was like I had never existed. On holidays, I spent time at Aunt Helen's house. We cooked together and watched old movies. We made our own little traditions, and they meant more to me than any of those awkward family dinners I used to have. Sometimes Aunt Helen would catch me looking at Mom's social media posts. She'd gently take my phone and say, "Don't do this to yourself. You're writing your own story now." And she was right, I was. I graduated summa cum laude and had job offers lined up before graduation, thanks to my good grades and internships. Jacqueline's dad, Mr. Eric, owned a big marketing company. He noticed my work during a school project event. "We need smart people like you," he said during my interview. "Your professors speak very highly of you." I started as a junior analyst, but I didn't stop there. I stayed late, took on extra work, and studied market trends in my free time. Within 6 years, I got promoted twice and saved enough money for a down payment on my own apartment. The day I signed the papers, I stood in my empty living room, holding the keys, and finally let myself cry. But these weren't sad tears. They were happy ones, tears of pride, success, and knowing I had done this all by myself. Then something amazing happened. One morning, about 8 years after I started at the company, Mr. Eric called me into his office. "We're creating a new position," he said, handing me a folder. "Senior Director of Strategic Development. The board and I agree. You're the right person for it." I opened the folder and almost gasped when I saw the salary. It was more money than I had ever imagined earning, especially at my age. I never felt the need to show off online. Sure, I had social media, but I mostly posted pictures of pretty sunsets or cozy coffee shops. Aunt Helen was the only one who knew about my promotions, my new apartment, or the black Mercedes I bought as a reward for getting the director job. "You've earned every bit of it," she would say, full of pride. Whenever I told Aunt Helen about my achievements, she always cheered me on. Meanwhile, Adam and Joyce's social media pages were full of boring things they made look important. Adam often posted pictures standing next to his old Hyundai Elantra with captions like, "Living the dream,"
"Blessed,"
"Luxury life." Joyce would post selfies at the local mall, tagging fancy designer brands that she clearly couldn't afford. One post really made me laugh. Adam standing proudly next to his car at a local car show, writing, "When hard work pays off. Success. Entrepreneur." I read it while sitting in my Mercedes AMG, which was worth more than Adam made in a whole year. But I didn't feel the need to show off or prove anything to anyone. Then came the message that changed everything. It popped up on my Instagram one Thursday morning. "Betty, it's your mother. My 56th birthday is next month, and I'm having a party at an expensive restaurant called Le Blanc. You've probably never heard of it. I expect you to be there. It's on the 16th at 8 p.m. sharp. Don't embarrass me." I stared at the screen, reading the message over and over. After 13 years of silence, this was how she chose to reach out? No, "How are you?" No kindness, no effort to reconnect, just a cold demand with a little insult thrown in about the restaurant. I almost deleted the message, but something stopped me. Maybe I was just curious. Or maybe I wanted to see how it would all play out. I called Mr. Eric and asked for a week off from work. That same evening, while sipping tea in Aunt Helen's warm kitchen, she asked me a question I had been asking myself. "What are you planning to give her?" I smiled and pulled out my phone, showing her the confirmation email. It was a luxury vacation package to the Australia, 3 weeks at a 7-star resort, with first-class flights included. The whole thing cost around $20,000. Aunt Helen's eyes went wide. Betty, that's way too much. She doesn't deserve it. Oh, I know she doesn't, I said with a laugh, taking another sip of tea. But can you imagine the look on her face when she realizes what she gave up? The daughter she tossed aside turned out more successful than she ever dreamed. I just want to see her reaction when she realizes how wrong she was about me. Aunt Helen chuckled and shook her head. You're a little bit evil, she said with a smile. I love it. On the evening of Mom's birthday, I put on a simple but elegant Chanel dress. It looked classy, and its price could have bought 10 of the flashy outfits I'd end up seeing that night. I took a taxi to the restaurant on purpose, knowing it would add to their false ideas about my life. Le Blanc was exactly what I thought it would be, the kind of place that only impressed people who had never eaten at a truly fancy restaurant. They served frozen seafood and just added gold flakes on desserts to make it seem expensive. I had been to business dinners at places so fancy that this restaurant looked more like a diner in comparison. A hostess led me to a private room where the party was already going strong. Mom sat at the head of the table in a sparkly sequin dress that shined under the chandelier. Peter sat next to her, with Adam and Joyce on either side, acting like they were royalty. The rest of the table was full of family members I hadn't seen in over 11 years. There was Aunt Laura, who used to pinch my cheeks way too hard, and Cousin Christina, who always talked nonstop about how great her kids were. A bunch of other familiar faces from my past were also there. Mom looked at me for just a second, then gave a fake smile. Oh, Betty, you actually came. You could have dressed up a little more for the occasion. I quietly took my seat at the far end of the table and watched everything unfold. Aunt Laura gave Mom a set of scented candles. It's from that nice little shop at the mall, she said proudly. Mom acted like it was something very special, like it was made of gold. Then Cousin Christina gave her a gift card to a spa. For a relaxing day, she said with a big smile. Mom squealed with happiness again. The gifts kept coming, a cookbook, a vase, a basket of bath stuff. Mom acted like each one was the most thoughtful thing ever, making sure to thank everyone loudly. Then it was Adam and Joyce's turn. They stood up together, smiling like they had just won a prize. Mom, Adam began. It still felt weird to hear him call her that. Joyce and I saved up to get you something really special. Joyce pulled out her phone and showed a photo. It's a 75-inch smart TV. We already had it delivered and put up in your living room. Mom started crying right away. She hugged both of them tight. My wonderful, generous children. I can't believe this. You must have saved up for so long. Then finally everyone looked at me. I reached into my purse and took out a small box. It was simple but nicely wrapped. Mom's smile disappeared instantly. Her face changed. What's this supposed to be? Just open it and see, I said quietly. But she didn't open it. Instead, she got angry. Her face turned red. This is exactly what I expected from you, she said sharply. You show up in that plain dress, probably the only nice thing you own. You take a taxi because you can't even afford a car. And now this tiny box. What could possibly be in there? A gift card to McDonald's. She threw the box back at me. It slid across the table and scratched the cheap surface. Adam and Joyce giggled behind their hands. Some guests looked uncomfortable. Others seemed to be enjoying the drama. Peter just kept eating his dessert like nothing was happening. I calmly picked up the box and brushed off a few crumbs from the tablecloth that had stuck to the pretty wrapping. The room was completely quiet. Everyone was waiting to see what I would do next. You know what's funny, Mom? I said, my voice steady. Inside this little box is a receipt for a luxury vacation to the Australia. First-class flights, a 7-star resort, everything included. It's worth $20,000. Mom's face turned pale. Joyce dropped her fork with a loud clatter. That's not possible, Mom stuttered. You can't afford something like that. You're lying. I couldn't help but laugh a little. You'd know what I can afford if you had cared about my life even once in the last 13 years. But since you didn't, let me update you. I'm a senior director at Eric Marketing Group. I own an apartment in the city. And that taxi you made fun of? I took it because I didn't want to leave my Mercedes parked in this neighborhood. Adam's mouth hung open. Joyce wasn't smiling anymore. And since you think I'm such a failure, I continued as I slipped the box back into my purse, and clearly don't want anything from me. I won't bother you anymore. Enjoy the TV. I heard the screen is almost as good as the one in my home theater. I stood up and walked out with my head high. The sound of my heels echoed in the quiet room. No one said a word. The restaurant host called a taxi for me, and I went straight to Aunt Helen's house. She was already waiting, with 2 cups of tea ready on the coffee table. I told her everything that had happened. Some people never change, she said, shaking her head. Your mother has always cared more about looking good than actually being good. We were still talking when my phone started ringing. It was an unknown number, but I knew who it was. Betty, sweetheart. Mom's voice sounded overly sweet. I had no idea how she got my number. I've been thinking about what happened. Have you? I asked calmly. Yes, she said. I realize I may have spoken too soon. If you're still willing to give me that gift, I'd love to accept it. We could use this as a fresh start. I want to be in your life again. We're family. No, I said, finally understanding everything. We're not really family. We're just people who share the same DNA. You didn't want to fix anything. You just want the vacation. Then I hung up. Even after I left town, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Mom tried calling from different numbers, her cell, the house phone, even Peter's phone. When she saw I wasn't going to answer, she started sending messages. Betty, please call me back. We need to talk about this. She kept texting me. I've been thinking about what you said about your job. Maybe you could help Adam get started in marketing. He's very creative. Joyce said she'd love to intern at a big company like yours. It would look great on her college applications. Also, the house needs some repairs, and since you're doing so well, each message was more obvious than the last. No, I'm sorry. No, I was wrong. Just one request after another. Hints about money, favors, and help for her kids. It felt like watching someone at a casino trying to win back what they lost. But in this case, what Mom lost wasn't money. It was me, her daughter. I read each message, without feeling much. It was like I was reading a work report. I started noticing the patterns, like a study in how people try to get what they want. She used different tricks. Guilt. I'm your mother. How can you ignore me? Flattery. You've become such a successful woman. Manipulation. Family should help family. Threats. I'll tell everyone how you abandoned your own mother. A week after I got back home, Aunt Helen called me. Your mom's been calling me non-stop, she said. And guess what? She showed up at my house today, if you can believe it. She demanded that I give her your address. What did you tell her? I asked, though I already knew the answer. I told her to leave my property or I'd call the police, Aunt Helen said with a little laugh. You should have seen her face. She kept saying she had a right to know where her daughter lives. I reminded her she gave up that right a long time ago. I pictured Mom standing on Aunt Helen's porch, probably wearing one of her fancy outfits, trying to force her way into getting what she wanted. It was the same behavior I'd seen my whole life, but now I could clearly see it for what it really was. She didn't take it well, Aunt Helen continued. She started yelling, saying we were both ungrateful, that she'd sacrificed everything for you. I think the whole neighborhood heard her shouting. When she realized I wasn't going to help, she stormed off. But Betty, be careful. She seemed desperate. I've already blocked her on everything, I told Aunt Helen. Social media, phone, email, everything. And I've told security at my office not to let her in if she ever shows up. After we hung up, I walked around my apartment, looking at everything I'd worked so hard for. The modern furniture I picked out myself. The paintings on the walls. The beautiful view of the city outside my window. Every part of it came from my own hard work. Then I thought about Mom's messages. Now that she knew I had money, Mom suddenly showed interest in my life. In the end, it was almost funny. She had thrown away her relationship with me just to look like she had the perfect family. And now, she wanted back into my life just to look like she was close to someone successful. But if she taught me anything, it was this. Family isn't about blood or papers. It's about love, support, and being there for each other through good and bad times. I had that with Aunt Helen. The next morning, I called a travel agency and changed the name on the Australia vacation package. Now, it was under Helen Thomas. When I told Aunt Helen, she tried to say no. But I smiled and told her, "You deserve this more than she ever did. You've been more of a mother to me than she ever was." Aunt Helen hugged me tightly. And for the first time in many years, I truly felt like I was right where I was meant to be.